Dr. Dale Hull is a 1985 graduate of the University of Utah School of Medicine. His graduation was followed by a residency in obstetrics and gynecology through the University of Utah Affiliated Hospitals program. He finished in 1989 and then practiced general OB/GYN for 10 years in the Southwest Salt Lake Valley until experiencing a spinal cord injury. In 2012, he received a Master's of Public Administration degree from Brigham Young University. He now serves as the Executive Director of Neuroworx and is the current president of the University of Utah School of Medicine Alumni Association. He's married with 4 sons and 10 grandchildren. Please welcome Dr. Dale Hull.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I am a quadriplegic. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, are you sure about that? Because you realize you walk, don't you? I assure you, I am partially paralyzed in all 4 limbs and my trunk. There was a time I was totally paralyzed, so I can assure you I am a quadriplegic. In the spinal cord injury community, people like me are affectionately known as walking quads. Walking for me is a very conscious act. I have to keep thinking about it, otherwise it'll be easy for me to trip and fall. I also have this unusual sensation. I'm partially numb from my mid-chest down, and you know when your arm wakes up and it feels pins and needle asleep? That's the way my whole body feels all the time. The numbness on my hands causes items that I'm holding in my hands to quickly disappear, and they easily slip through my fingers. Like other people with paralysis, I do not have normal bowel, bladder, and sexual function. And I appreciate that as a TMI statement. My kids remind me of that all the time. Nevertheless, that is the reality of paralysis. Now you're thinking, so what happened? Well, thank you for asking. In July 19th, 1999, while jumping on my backyard trampoline, I failed to complete a backflip, resulting in a dislocation of the 5th cervical vertebrae over the top of the 4th in a locked spinal cord pinching configuration. Instantly, I entered the world of paralysis without a trace of motor or sensory function. And I immediately knew that life as I knew it was completely done. And in a curious thought, I actually knew that I would be the quadriplegic show and tell for Dr. James Swenson's second-year medical student that year, just as I had watched a paralyzed gymnast when I was a student. Suddenly, I had entered this remarkable journey, so overwhelmingly difficult and unpredictable, I barely knew where to begin, let alone where I would end. Now, I realize how fortunate I am to have as much function as I do. I mean, there's no question I'm blessed. But here's the thing. I miss my body every day. I miss me. So it's this weird schizophrenic-like existence where I'm still here, but I'm not really here. And in another odd circumstance, I kind of live in this between world where I'm really not a wheelchair-dependent quadriplegic, but I'm not a normal ambulatory human either. Now, this journey that I've been on over the last 17 and a half years has been so amazingly remarkable. I have learned so much and had so many incredible experiences that if God, Buddha, Allah, or Bill Gates could show up right here and say, I can make you whole again, but you'll have to forget everything you've learned, I would have to say, no thank you. Now, I'd like to share some of those lessons with you today. So after the neurosurgeons did their thing and I had a short stay in the neuro ICU, I then went to inpatient rehab. Now here's the first lesson. Rehab's like any other place you've ever been, and here's why. Most of us go to the hospital with the anticipation that you're going to get better. And even if you die, you know you're being transferred to the ECU, the Eternal Care Unit. In some ways, you're getting better. If you go to rehab, it's because you've had a spinal cord injury, brain injury, stroke, or major trauma. You're not necessarily going to get better. You're going to get different. And getting different is something that we are not accustomed to doing. So this was the unnerving concept that I was facing as I made my way into rehab. Now, I also want to point out to you that I realized I could stay very attractive as a patient by showing lots of leg and a little bit of shoulder. Just a tip for y'all. Probably the most difficult thing for me was the loss of personal independence. To go from malignantly independent to totally dependent was really harsh. And all the things you can think about and all the things you don't want to think about, they have to be done for you. Now, as a physician, I understand the need for procedures and processes. What I didn't really appreciate was how difficult it was to subordinate myself to other human beings. So let me give you a quick example. On about the second or third evening of my stay in rehab, a very sturdily built nurse of Scandinavian persuasion suddenly appeared in my room and announced in no uncertain terms, "It is time for the bowel program." Caught completely by surprise, my initial thought was, I wonder what cable channel that's on. Without delay, she flipped me to my side, threw down a plastic sheet, snapped on some gloves, and went to work, all the while carrying on this chatty monologue about the events of her day. Talk about a weird, surreal experience. Midway through this odd affair, I looked at this poor aide standing at the head of my bed, and I said, "What do you think you get someone who helps you with this? Is there a Hallmark card?" I just don't think there's any way you can be prepared for that kind of experience. Well, regardless of those kind of experiences, I'm very grateful for the nurses, the aides, the therapists, etc., who gave me very respectful and excellent care. Although I don't know what you say about people who make rabbit ears behind someone who's totally paralyzed. That's a little odd. Now, the other thing that I struggled with was this overwhelming loss of self-esteem. I did not feel like an acceptable human being anymore. I even worried about what people said about me at board rounds. It was kind of that modern-day leper problem. Well, there were a couple of caregivers that I noticed were very helpful with these feelings of inferiority. So I started to pay attention. What was it about these caregivers that was different? Well, when they would finish taking care of me, and before they left my room, they would put a hand on my shoulder and say, "Is there anything else that we can do for you?" I mean, this was independently. They weren't together. And at first I thought, oh, it's this courteous inquiry. But then I realized other people were asking me too. And then it dawned on me. It was a simple hand on my shoulder where I could feel. You see, what I came to understand is that patients are typically only touched when a task is to be performed: feeding, bathing, moving, medicating, etc. When these individuals touched me when they didn't have to, it communicated to me that I was an acceptable human being, at least to them. So I actually coined the term non-task touching to emphasize the concept of the power of human touch as a form of communication, even in a medical setting. Now, my hospital stay was 3.5 months, during which I had this amazing, surprising recovery of neurological function. My progress was inconsistent and kind of halting, and it was compromised by a pretty gnarly postoperative abscess after my second surgery, as well as an episode of Pseudomonas sepsis after urinary tract infection. I now know what it means to be so sick you want to die, not so sick you're afraid you're going to die from that. This is me with my 5-volume hospital chart. And do you want to know why I'm smiling? I didn't have to dictate one stinking page of that chart. Now, going home, maybe, Maybe I'll go home. Can you help advance the slide? The down arrow? Going home is a mixed blessing. You're thrilled that you're out of the hospital, but home is a constant reminder of a prior life and prior abilities. It's a very validating, sobering experience of the I'm not going to get better, I'm going to get different concept. Now, the burden of rehabilitation now has shifted to the outpatient side with its very limited benefits. And I became very frustrated that with a system that felt like it was trying to change my environment before it was trying to change me. I just wanted a chance to improve. Well, 7 months after my accident, I had the good fortune of meeting an amazing physical therapist named Jan Black. And at this point in time, I could walk maybe 20 or 30 feet with a walker, had very limited hand and finger function, and really required help with just about all my activities. Tapping into Jan's knowledge, expertise, and experience allowed me to work hard on the neurological recovery I had to try and turn that into functional ability. And we tried to focus on every modality and option that we had to optimize that outcome. Well, my 5-day-a-week, 2-year hard work culminated with me having the opportunity to carry the Olympic torch during the 2002 Winter Olympic Games. Thank you. I wish I was done, but I'm not. I am proud to tell you, however, that I was able to complete my 15 minutes of flame without any assistive device. And even more rewarding was the fact that I had many, many people who came to share that experience with me and my family. Now, to make it even more Hollywood-like, I had the opportunity to pass the Olympic flame to Karl Malone of the Utah Jazz. So on this particular day, it wasn't Stockton to Malone, it was Holden Malone. Now, I need to pause and put this all in perspective. Because if someone would have walked into my hospital room shortly after my injury and said to me, look, I know things look terrible. You're totally paralyzed, your life is over, but in a little over 2 years, you're going to walk down the middle of a street in Salt Lake City under your own power without any assistance. You're going to carry a 3.5-pound Olympic torch with your own hand, with gloves on in the cold, and you're going to be surrounded by hundreds of people who love you, and you're going to pass the Olympic flame to someone very well known. I would have looked at them at that moment and said, that's going to take a miracle. I don't know why I am so fortunate. I just know that I am. Now, the question is, what's next? And my life at this point felt like this blank screen, as fortunate as I'd been. Obviously, there are other people I had met who was on this journey of paralysis. They wanted what I had. Well, I couldn't invite them to my house. That was a little awkward because that's where I got my therapy. They wanted Jan as their therapist. And Jan and I said, well, I don't know, is there something we can do about this? Jan had always wanted her own clinic. So we talked about it, we thought about it. Well, as you saw in the preview, I ran across this quote attributed to Gandhi. You must be the change you want to see in the world. And as soon as I read this quote, I thought, are you kidding me? Really? Because I knew what it meant. So we got busy. We wrote a business plan. We formed a nonprofit. And in 2004, we opened Neuroworx, a physical therapy facility focused on providing evidence-based care in a time-liberal environment. And the goal was to provide an opportunity for people to make as much progress as possible and to eliminate as many barriers to the care as we could. Well, from these very meager, Spartan, partially fulfilled room with about 12 patients, we slowly expanded. We wrote grants, we solicited funds, we bought equipment, we hired staff, and by 2009 we moved into what we thought would be forever lasting 4,000 square feet. We thought, man, this is it. We've got it. We don't need anything else. This is so cool. By 2012, we had a limited pediatric program that we added based on some equipment that we had. And wouldn't you know it, by 2014, we are working on top of each other. We are crowded, and we had provided care to at least 1,000 different individuals from 22 states and 4 different countries. And we knew we needed more. We had to do more. Well, through the incredible generosity of people in this community, we were able to design and build a 24,500 square foot facility that we moved into in August of 2015. We now have specialized gait trainers. We have high-tech aquatic therapy pools. We have an enlarged land therapy area with an overhead robotic harness system. We have a whole other floor that we can expand in. And we even have our own gymnasium. There it is, which is a place for therapy, but it's also a practice facility for the wheelchair basketball teams and quad rugby teams. And yes, that is an NBA sanctioned jazz logo on the floor, thanks to the Miller family. So we're very, very grateful for that. Currently, we provide physical and occupational therapy for people with spinal cord injuries, brain injuries, stroke, and for children, cerebral palsy, and other neurological conditions. Now the question is, what is this all about for us? This is about people. This is about people whose lives have been devastated by catastrophic circumstances. This is about people whose lives have been turned upside down, and they are trying to choose change after change chose them. It's really about just giving them an opportunity to make as much progress, even if it's a small amount, because really, they just want a chance. Now, walking is the holy grail of paralysis. We know that, but we also know there's a lesion-based limit. Not everyone, unfortunately, are going to walk right now. But we believe if we make their spirits walk, we've still done a good thing. It's a difficult thing to have to face this. And there are those who are concerned that we're creating false hope. But I want to remind all of us that false despair can be just as detrimental. Most of us can get through just about anything if you have hope and you have a plan. And one of the things I've come to realize is that the physical paralysis is actually the easy part. Because these people are paralyzed emotionally, mentally, psychologically, and spiritually, and all other ways. Giving them a chance to work hard is empowering, and helping them have even that much more personal independence is a quantum change in their life. That's what it's all about for us. When I was going through my rehab, Jan would say, "Aren't you happy with your progress?" And I was so concerned that if I said I was happy, the progress would stop. So I would say, "Well, I'm pleased but not satisfied." These last 17 and a half years have been so amazing. The people I've met have enriched my life, and I'm unquestionably grateful for the unwavering support of my wife and family, and overwhelmed by the generosity of the people who believe in our mission. And after all these years and all these experiences, I can still say that I'm pleased but not satisfied. I hope if you face adversity in your life that you are as blessed as I am. Thank you very much.